Turning down the political heat. Welcome to Columbus on the Record. I'm Mike Thompson. The stunning murder of conservative activist Charlie Kirk has once again focused attention on hyper-heated political rhetoric. A gunman using a high-powered rifle killed Kirk Wednesday as he spoke at a Utah Valley University rally. On Friday, authorities announced they arrested a 22-year-old man in connection with the shooting. Officials say Tyler Robinson was arrested after family members urged him to surrender. Kirk's murder is the latest incident of violence directed at politicians that include the murder of a Minnesota lawmaker and her spouse, the firebombing of the Pennsylvania governor's mansion, and 2 assassination attempts, of course, on President Trump. Gene Krebs, after one of these incidents, there's always calls for more civility. We need to lower the temperature. We need to stop yelling at each other and calling each other names, and it goes away. Does it last this time?
I wish I could be the irrational optimist you're hoping for. This country has a problem, and that is, okay, Lincoln was shot, Garfield, McKinley, Harry Truman almost got shot by Puerto Rican separatists. Then you go to the 1960s, a lot of assassinations. There's something wrong in how we decide or make our decisions that ends up with too much conflict occurring between the parties. We can't relax some means. I'll give you an example. Great Britain has had 1 prime minister assassinated ever. Okay, this is unheard of in Europe. This just doesn't happen in other democratic republics.
Stanley, does the bold nature of this assassination at a rally, caught by camera in front of 3,000 people, the person who was killed, Charlie Kirk, being a lightning rod, does that amp up the anger?
I think so, absolutely. I mean, when you think about it, at this point, there's a lot of turns of the tide, right? You have historically black colleges where I am a graduate of Howard University that have been on lockdown. They have to cancel classes as well. And so, you think about it and you see what's happening and you realize that, we need to make sure that we're putting down the guns. We need to have regular conversation with folks. We need to be able to be open to open communication and make sure that this thing doesn't happen again. I mean, the country right now is at a fork in the road. I think about, the historically black colleges that I mentioned that are under attack, getting threats, but I also think of even, the Malcolms, the Martins that were assassinated as well for their opinions. And so we need to make sure that we're having open conversation with folks, be able to hear the other side, but then also make sure that any disagreements we have, we handle that in the civil way as well.
The forum for disagreements, Andrew, is social media. And the governor of Utah today called it a cancer. How much of that can we blame on this?
Truly, I think it plays a big role in political polarization. This is something that I am intentional about as a professional journalist. I think about the way that I talk about things. I don't know that that's true of 80% of social media users. I watched how this unfolded. People say that the video itself, which got shared, this horrible shooting, that kind of thing contributes to political polarization. So I hadn't seen the Utah governor's comments, but I think that's a pretty apt, criticism and explanation of, or at least in part of what's happening here.
Could this stifle free speech, especially on a college campus? I mean, in 2017, OSU denied Richard Spencer, white supremacist, permission to speak on campus because they were worried about security, and they said it was a danger to public safety, and they denied him permission to speak on campus. He sued, and they dropped the case. But you can see that who would have somebody like a Charlie Kirk on campus now?
Well, yes, except that the right for free speech is, according to the recent rulings of the Supreme Court, including the Roberts Court, pretty darn well near absolute. But I want to go back to one more thing that your audience has heard me say before. This is the only country that settled the issue of slavery via a civil war. Everybody else was able to do it through legislative means, imperial edicts, things of that nature. Once again, I think we need to do some deep discussions amongst ourselves to find out what is it about how we are constructed that leads us to this inability to constructively come up with this dialogue and instead divide up into factions so easily here. There's something wrong.
I mean, given that history, Stanley, I mean, I don't have a whole lot of hope. It goes back 200 years.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue it goes further than 200 years. I mean, the root of the founding of this country is just the epitome of making sure that folks were not able to agree, whether it's class, whether it's race, and we're seeing that unfold right now. I mentioned the Malcolms and the Martins, as Gene mentioned, some of the presidents too, and that's the history of this country. And so, unfortunately, I have some thoughts that I don't think, that we're going to get there, unfortunately. I hope that we can have more conversation and be able to have that dialogue. But, the Europeans have figured this out, as Gene mentioned as well. And, we need to do that as well.
We are getting closer to a campaign season, a more intense campaign season race for governor. Amy Acton is running for governor. She faced death threats and had people on her front lawn with guns. Vivek Ramaswamy is a very robust speaker. He's not quite as out there as Charlie Kirk was, but he's a powerful force, Doge, big Trump supporter. How do these campaigns change, do you think, Andrew?
With both of those candidates, I'm going to be optimistic at this moment that they'll be responsible with the things that they say. It's hard to anticipate where our country is going to be a year from now. I wouldn't have predicted something like this 2 years ago or a year ago. So hopefully that's the case, that they'll have a measured tone. I mean, they will be talking about state government issues, which don't tend to be as hot button as some of the other things out there, but it's really hard to say. But like I said, I'm going to choose to be optimistic right now, especially with who the candidates are.
I'm going to push back just a little bit. I know of a city council person in Vandalia who gets threats almost every week. I mean, we're talking here a local, medium-sized, small-sized city. So I think it's out there. I just don't think that the media is necessarily aware of it. But yeah, so it goes on.
I'd even argue too, though, I mean, it's also on the leaders to make sure that they're calling this down and saying that this is not appropriate and this is not who we are. I mean, when folks come out and immediately address it and not try to add to the fuel to the fire, I mean, I think that that's important, and a lot of folks need to do that more.
Yeah, in the immediate aftermath, I think there was that. Now we'll see what happens week 1, week 2, week 3, especially as we learn more about the motivation of the shooter, which apparently it was. Early indications are there were politics involved. Anyway, our next topic this week provided more information on the relationship between child sex offender Jeffrey Epstein and Limited founder Les Wexner. Epstein's 50th birthday tribute book, released by a House committee, included a note apparently written by Wexner. It reads, "Dear Jeffrey, I wanted to get you what you want, so here it is. Happy birthday from your friend Leslie." The note included sketches of female breasts. The next page of the book featured a picture of Wexner and Epstein at some kind of party. A spokesman for Wexner declined to comment. The note was written a few years before Wexner says he cut off all contact with Jeffrey Epstein, and Wexner has claimed repeatedly that he was never aware of any illegal activity by Epstein. Andrew Tobias, not much new here except that we learned more about the creepy nature of Jeffrey Epstein and how many people, Les Wexner, Donald Trump, contributed to that or fed into that.
Yeah, this is a really complex case. There's a lot of lawsuits and criminal cases involving Jeffrey Epstein. So I'm not an expert on everything that's out there in the public record, but I know that it's been known that Wexner and Epstein were associates. So this book that came out just kind of, to some extent, just kind of proves what we already knew, I guess. But seeing the drawings and kind of like the ribald humor and stuff like that, I guess it's memorable, and it kind of just illustrates kind of, in retrospect, it looks like kind of maybe people should have known what was going on and they didn't say anything.
Yeah, is it locker room talk? Remember when that came out, Gene, when the Access Hollywood tape? Is this what this is? Do people write this off as that, or is this more than that?
No, it's much more than that. In fact, it's gotten to the point where some really deep QAnon Trumpians in my hood have now taken down their Trump flags because of this. I'm not a crisis management expert like Mark Weaver is on your show. But I'm going to channel my inner Mark Weaver here and say, for all my fellow Republicans, just whatever it is you have, just come clean and say, if you've taken money from Les Wexner, return it. If you used to call for Epstein's files to be released, stay consistent with that. Just get this thing behind you, because it's the delay, it's the obfuscation that makes it worse.
To those campaign contributions, Les Wexner has contributed to campaigns, really to both, a lot to Republicans, but also to some Democrats. Can a candidate take any donation from Les Wexner after all this?
I wouldn't personally. I think that this is a time where, you be transparent and also continue to call for the fact that the Epstein files should be released. Transparency is key. I mean, the more that folks shy away from it and keep this in the shadows, the larger that the boogeyman is going to be. And we need to just go ahead and open the door and be more transparent. And so if I were a political candidate, I would advise folks to not take any donations just because we don't know still all the details of what's out there.
This must increase the calls for release of all the files. Let me see what's in this book. I mean, this is a small portion of what's out there, apparently.
Yeah, and Democrats have been leading into that. We saw Amy Acton call for Vivek Ramaswamy about, 6 weeks ago, a previous development in this story, to try to get him to weigh in on what he thinks now, because he's one of many people on the right who, before Donald Trump became president, called for these files to be released. We saw Acton renew that call again this week. And so, it's pretty clear that they see this as something that Trump ran on and that his supporters don't like now that he see it as hypocritical, so they're leaning into it. So the politics of it are quite clear.
So on the Republican side, John Husted is a senator. He may have to vote on this at some point. I think it was a procedural vote that he voted not to release, at least at this point. And then Vivek Ramaswamy have to take a stand, even though he's governor. How does that play with the Republican base?
It's kryptonite. I mean, I can't emphasize this enough. Look, my people have spent X number of years hammering about, there's the Epstein files, he was killed in prison, all the conspiracy theories, and now they're going, no, we want to see everything. The more you hide, the more or delay, the more it looks like somebody, and I agree with Thomas Massey on this. He says that Trump probably isn't involved himself, but a lot of his good friends and donors may be involved, and his political partners, but it's just got to come out.
We will
staunch the bleeding now, cauterize the wound.
We shall see. With the first of several deadlines approaching, Democrats have taken the first step in the upcoming fight over redistricting. Democrats this week unveiled their map. Under the plan, Ohio's 15 congressional districts, in theory, would be more balanced than they are now. Historic voting patterns indicate Republicans would be favored in 8 districts, Democrats in 7. Currently, 10 Republicans and 5 Democrats represent Ohio in Congress, and the speculation is that Republican maps will try to win at least 2 more seats for Republican candidates. Stanley Gates, I talked to Minority Leader Danny Isaacson this week. He said this map he thinks it fairly represents Ohio, and it has competitive districts where, depending on the year, Republicans and Democrats could swing some of those. But is this going to be anything like what we see when this is all over?
I doubt it. But I'm optimistic because I think, when you look at what happened several years ago, the Democrats are on a united front. The Democrats have come together, Senate and also House, to release this map. We didn't see that the last time. And so I like that they're early. I like that they're doing this and making sure that folks know, while also making sure that the speaker knows too. And I also know that the speaker has already said that that's not going to fly. But, I think that this is a really good effort. I mean, across the country, locally, and also on the state level too. We don't see this a lot from our Democratic colleagues. And so I'm happy that they have come out early. They said this is what they want, and they're going to make sure that they stand for it. I think this is going to drag on and be a very long fight, but I'm very happy to see that they've come together, and I hope that, down the road that this will actually help, because at the end of the day, this is about the constituents and making sure that we are able to get what we need. But I do think that Democrats should have an additional seat in the Congressional legislature so that we can make sure that things are more fair.
So now come to the point in the show where I beat, like a rented mule, the Ohio Democratic Party. Okay? In 2009, they were offered a fair deal. And they agreed to it initially. And then they said, oh, no, wait, we think we can run the table. They got greedy. Yep. And so this whole thing I keep going back to is the just absolute mind-boggling ineptness of my opposition. And as the Bible says, Iron sharpens iron. I want a good, worthy opponent, and I'm not getting it from the ODP. For them to now complain about this, I'm going, go away.
Now, there have been so many maps that have been unveiled, Andrew, as you well know. In this process, are the Democrats, at least they got out early in this one? Are they ahead of where they have been in the past fights? Does that make a difference?
I think probably what they're trying to do is either kickstart negotiations or highlight the fact that Republicans aren't negotiating with them. I actually don't read that much into what Matt Huffman says about these things because I just think the incentives are so clear because of the way the process works, for them to wait until November when they'll be able to pass a map with no Democratic votes and not really take any of this stuff into consideration. But that kind of aside out there, Huffman responded to this by saying, well, we would like to negotiate behind closed doors, but it really isn't a great start when they're announcing this stuff in the media before they talk to us. So that's how he responded. It's kind of like a cat and mouse game, but I think that's, we will probably see this month pass without a map being introduced, and I think that's what Democrats want to highlight by doing this.
Stanley, if you look at the 6 states of New England, there's not one Republican representative, not one congresswoman or man. And they're liberal, but it's at least 40% of those folks up there are conservative. So those are gerrymandered districts. I mean, Vermont only has 1 seat, but still. Is it fair that Ohio should try to balance that in Congress? Ohio, Texas, now Missouri apparently just this week voted to change one of the district's maps?
I think it is fair, personally. I think that, when you look at this kind of thing and the way that Ohio has been shaped, we are very much a mixed state. And that's also the argument that's been made when folks are trying to push out Representative Capter and also even Sykes. And so I think for that reason, you should be fair. And I think that, although those states are liberal leaning and they're not having the same conversation, we're not like those states. We're not like Texas. We're not like Florida. We are Ohio. And I think that we have a responsibility to make sure that we have equal representation, fair representation in Congress.
This got shot down last year, Gene, the plan to fix the system overwhelmingly. And do voters care anymore? If Republicans go too far and try to go down to 2 Democratic districts in the state?
The voters, they won't. We insiders will know, and we will care immensely. But just compare this to a little bit to Iowa. Governor DeWine talked about copying what Iowa does. Iowa's 4% African American. We're 12%, and we have to have minority majority districts. Okay. Under current court findings. However, those court findings are now in danger of being overturned at SCOTUS. So if that does happen, then we can bring, because I looked at the Iowa plan in the 90s, and I thought this could work here, but for that issue. So if that gets overturned, we need something easily understood that the voters can intuitively understand. The problem with what the league brought forward last time, it was 2 steps too complicated.
It's always going to be complicated, though, right, Andrew? I mean, there's so many things you have to worry about: compactness and partisanship and minority districts. And
the Iowa plan, I think, is a little bit less goofy for that.
There's talk that if the Republicans wait until November and pass the bill, the redistricting map with a simple majority, that it could end up on the ballot. Is that a legit plan that Democrats might have, put this issue back on the ballot? Because the voters can, if they collect enough signatures, put a recently passed law on the ballot for the voters to decide.
I think it's a viable strategy. The way I kind of view it is that it would have a high probability of keeping everything in court. There are timelines that these things have to meet. I forget exactly what the date is, but there's ballots have to be sent out. There's a candidate filing deadline. There's going to be a 90-day lag time for this bill to take effect. So there's going to be a time crunch if they pass this in November, like I think they will. And so something like that, would just kind of add to the likelihood that it's going to get settled in court. And I think it could be a bargaining chip that Democrats could use, as kind of like a last-ditch thing. So, there's a lot of factors that go into it, but I do think that is a realistic option, at least even as a negotiating strategy.
Do you think Democrats, if the Republicans say we'll stop at 4 districts instead of going for 3, limiting Democrats to 3 districts, we'll stop at 4? Is there a compromise there? Would they go for it, or are they not going to compromise at all?
I don't think that they're going to compromise. I think with them coming out so early and also being aggressive and kind of saying what they want, I don't think that there's going to be any conversation for that kind of compromise. I think that Democrats have made it very clear that they want more seats, and I think that that is a fair request given the makeup and also the way that the state has voted in the past several elections as well.
And the Republicans won't bend because this is being dictated by the White House.
Yep. They're following his lead. Cooler temperatures provide reminders that we all should get our flu and other vaccines, but now those simple shots are sparking controversy. The debate over vaccine has moved from the fringe to the mainstream. The vaccine skeptic Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is the nation's top health official. He's rolled back recommendations on the COVID vaccine and reduced vaccine research funds. Florida is moving to end all vaccine mandates, including ones for school kids. Here in Ohio, Governor DeWine and the state's health director will not follow Florida's lead. Ohio will stay the course on vaccine recommendations and rules. Andrew Tobias, not a huge surprise, Governor DeWine following the science here, not wanting to get involved in this. Is that not surprising, right?
No, he was a proponent of the coronavirus vaccine. He, also, generally speaking, supporting a vaccination regime is decades old. I mean, I'm sure Mike DeWine remembers the polio epidemic and stuff like that. So really not surprising, especially with the concern that he has for kids, his appreciation for public health and history. So not at all.
Does Ohio even need to ban mandates then? Because parents can opt out. They can opt out for medical reasons, of course, but they also can opt out of a childhood vaccine for their kids for reasons of conscience, whatever that is. But so we don't really need to have a ban on mandates because parents can opt out.
No, we don't need an extra ban. But I do think that, at the end of the day, I applaud Governor DeWine for following the science. I mean, this is not something that we should be politicizing. Science matters, and also the data shows as well. And so, I don't think that we necessarily even need to go into that because, the science is there. Should
government mandate people get vaccines, Gene?
So let me give you a nuanced answer. As my 7th and 8th grade civics teacher taught me, the right to swing your fist stops where your neighbor's nose begins. If you don't want to have a tetanus shot, that's fine, because if you step on a rusty nail, you'll die of lockjaw, and that's just up to you. But if you refuse to get maybe the measles, mumps, rubella, that type of shot, now you're impacting my nose. And that's the key difference here. It's not just how it impacts you, but how it impacts, and even, I have to say that Trump was baffled when Florida said they're going to stop requiring all vaccines. He's just going, I don't understand that. I don't understand it either.
Why is this an issue, do you think? Is it because we're so far removed from when measles was a real problem, when polio was I don't remember polio. I hear stories, but I certainly never lived through it. Gene, is it because we're so far removed from these diseases?
That's a very valid point. I still have the scar on my right arm from my polio shot. I have childhood friends who had a bad limp or a withered arm due to polio. So, but as time goes on, people tend to forget about the realism of it. At least they're not coming after septic tanks and sewage systems yet, because if we ever come back to where we have cholera epidemics like we used to, well, Katie barred the door, that's 35% mortality rate.
Unfortunately, is that what it's going to take to bring this debate back to reality, or will it just pass, do you think?
I don't think this is going to pass. I mean, I think that right now, one thing that I want to make sure that we underscore is the reason we aren't having a lot of these conversations is because folks have taken the vaccines. And so, the fact that they have been mandated in some case to be able to control the spread of them, and also making sure that our colleagues, our friends aren't hit with these kind of things. I mean, it's a result of the science and knowing that we need these vaccines.
So as far as the Gene Krebs reading list, the book, The Dawn of Everything, goes into the fact that as societies become more polarized, they begin to define themselves as being different than their adversary. And just because some Democrats may want, say, oh, we need to cover up our masks, then the conservatives go, oh my God, we can't do that. It's just, we pick ways to define ourselves differently.
All right, let's get to our final off-the-record parting shots. Gene Krebs, you're up first.
I'm calling for my party to do a reset and a do-over and look for Plan B. I'm hearing way too much from my neighbors and relatives about how they are not happy with Ramaswamy being the nominee on a variety of reasons you don't have enough time for me to get into. But we need to look around for a different candidate, because the idea of Amy Acton being governor just drives me nuts.
All right, Stanley.
We're in strange times, and I really have been thinking about this all week, and I want to make sure that we don't let that go. I know a lot of folks that look like me are under attack right now as a result of something that had nothing to do with us, quite frankly. And so, I have a call to action of people being good and also just doing good.
All right, Andrew.
So we asked Mike DeWine this week basically to weigh in on whether, if Donald Trump were to send the National Guard into Ohio cities to fight crime, whether he would go along with it. He gave a really long answer. I listened to it like 3 or 4 times to try to discern exactly what it was that he was saying. But he basically said as governor, he wouldn't order it, but he was really intentional about not commenting on whatever Donald Trump may or may not do. So take of that what you will.
Yeah, he's been very careful about that stuff. I was on vacation last week, went to Quebec, and I was very pleased. There's nobody talks politics up there, which was so refreshing. Didn't have to deal with it all, except they were selling T-shirts that says "Canada is not for sale," in case you were wondering. But nobody was buying them. Anyway, that's the Columbus on the Record for this week. Continue the conversation. You can do that on Facebook. You can also watch us anytime at our website, wosu.org/COTR. We're also on YouTube and the PBS app. For our crew and our panel, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.